Manga villains are, more times than not, amazing. They are something else. Through the years, I've seen a plethora of manga villains, and no two are ever the same. There's just something so different about villains when it comes to manga versus comics. If you think of the most famous villains from iconic comic stories compared to the most iconic villains from popular manga, they don't compare in the slightest, if we're being completely real. I mean, there's just so much substance with manga villains. Their characters, their motivations, and at times the backstories that accompany them. Their ideologies are some of the best I've witnessed on screen when it comes to anime. Good example of this I can give is someone like Johann Liebert, complex character subjected to abuse as a child along with his sister. He then goes on a killing spree, believing that in debt everyone is equal. No one has more money in debt, more fame, more riches, more women, nothing. Now let's actually talk about some of the best manga villains in the history and why they're so good. But before we actually get into the meat of the subject, we have to talk about introductions because that's what will make or break your villain. I'm pretty sure from the first frame of that clip you just saw, you already know who or what I'm about to talk about. And that is Madara Uchiha. This is his introduction and how we as an audience is introduced to such a powerhouse. And I'm going to ask you a question. Put the answer in the comments. But what about this introduction stands out to you? What makes it, in your opinion, a good villain introduction? At the same time, I'd like to remind you of how Madara has been built up since the early stages of the story, talking about his powers, his rivalry with the first Hokage, and his Uchiha history. That part is all talk, just foreshadowing. It's good. The most important part is actually to show your villain doing something instead of saying, aka show, don't tell. So, in his introduction, by himself, he faced the allies of the Fourth Great Ninja War and massacred them, which is what I'd say is so memorable and iconic about this introduction. He didn't say what he was going to do, he just done it, which is important for a villain. If all a villain does is say, we as an audience are going to dismiss the villain if all they do is say, because that just shows that they're all talk, no action, all bark, no bite. A YouTuber by the name of Savage Books released a video called The 4 Ways to Write a Perfect Villain Entrance. It talks about how a good villain will use fear in the introduction, which is exactly what Madara does when he drops the planetary devastation on the Alliance. I mean, just look at the utter defeat in this guy's face. The character's response to this tells us how to react to the villain, whether we should be scared or not. Even if we're not scared, we can put ourselves in the shoes of the characters that are facing the villain, and then we would know whether we should be scared or not. Now, the reason Madara is such a standout villain, as I've said before, everything adds up. His foreshadowing, his great introduction, and what he does in the war. Most manga villains have great and or understandable ideologies. Madara's ideology was that no one should experience an end such as death, as he grew up with such things. All his brothers dead, except for one, who later died at the hands of battle, war. So because of this, he wanted peace for everybody, but just went about it the wrong way. And his motivation was the icing on the cake, which was peace, as I've just stated. That's all he wanted, and one of the best things and most interesting things about having a good villain is them succeeding in their plan, which is what Madara done by executing the infinite Tsukiyomi, but somehow he's still discredited by some fans. But we'll talk about that one another day. On to the next one, Griffith. Opposites attract. Griffith did everything wrong, from throwing a tantrum because he lost his best soldier, atrocity he committed on his own friends. But at the same time, he is one of the greatest villains in manga to date, from friend to foe. When it comes to villains, sometimes they're counterparts to their protagonists, but they don't always have to be. Guts and Griffith are yin and yang, night and day, but it's not what you think. Griffith is a poser throughout the story of Berserk. Griffith is seen as the angel and Guts the demon, but it's actually the other way around, which I think is genius from Miura. If you just look at their characterization and the character designs, Guts, always in black, cloaked, always in the darkness, whereas Griffith, the light one, the beautiful one, white hair, white armor, silver armor, light. It's a clear contrast between the two. Griffith's motivation was being royalty because he came from poverty. He always wanted his own kingdom. His ideology, on the other hand, was what caused everything. He considers a friend to be an equal, someone that can fall back on their own goals and motivations. Sometimes I like to imagine if Guts never went up those stairs. If only. When it comes to introductions, there aren't many like Griffith's. It was absolute domination. And if you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I mean when I say absolute domination. It was brutal, and it's something that you definitely won't forget as someone who's read and watched it. The last villain we'll talk about today is Sabuza, the best introductory villain in my opinion, because he set the tone for Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura as up and coming ninjas. He talked about the ninja world using ninjas as tools to be used, and he was okay with that, which is why he done the same to Haku. It was a cycle of sorts, tools using other tools. Like I said before, manga villains just have something different about them. There's just something so different compared to other forms of graphic novels compared to manga. The villains are complex, they have great motivations. Maybe not so great motivations sometimes, but their characters are always what sets them apart from the usual villain, the run of the mill villains from other stories, you know? They just have so much depth and intrigue. Any big name anime has a villain with depth, but obviously for every Bleach, there'll be a One Punch Man. Not every manga villain is well thought out, but they are well written more times than not. The ones I talked about don't even touch the surface. But that's all the time we have today. Hope you guys liked the video. Tell me about your favorite manga villains. Until next time, and peace.